Welcome back to another session. I hope you were well. The two sessions that I covered previously was themed the social dance. In both sessions, part one and part two, I focused on the importance of recognizing how your group, your community, your inner circle can play a significant role in helping you vet your significant other or the people you want in your life for long term, you might say, a long term union, whether that be in the form of some um, marriage commitment or some legal, religious connection in whatever form it might come. And what was fascinating is as I covered the session, I obviously, like most things, you never cover everything you would like to. But yesterday evening, I someone sent me something that a link to a conversation, an interaction between a number of people in a podcast. I normally wouldn't listen for that long, but I was intrigued. I was intrigued because the parties who were present, you had a divergent set of ideas. One party on one left side, not referring to political left or right, but on the left side, and the other on the right side of the table. And they were speaking about different topics. Both sides, you could say, had an opposite perspective, both in lived experiences, but in philosophy. Here's what is strange, and what I consider to have been fascinating. The side that I generally, you would say, temperamentally agree with were on the left, and the side that I temperamentally, perhaps based on my preferences and my life choices, were on the right. Before I started listening, I could have wagered that I would side with the section that was in alignment with my philosophy, my core values. However, I was stunned. I was stunned primarily because 10 minutes into the conversation, what came to mind was this. If I had the opportunity to be in a pub and I had the opportunity to choose which of the two parts of the table I would want to be with in a pub, which would I choose? Strangely enough, it was the side or the team of people who had a different perspective to what I believed in. It was revealing to watch in real time how sometimes, even if you have a feeling that your way is the right way, sometimes people do not accept it. So in today's session, what I want to talk about is how do you receive feedback and how do you become a good receiver? I'll rewind and go back a few months. Some months ago, I was in a loved one's place. Friends, some new acquaintances that I had just met. And as we sat there, and as we conversed, I said something that struck a nerve across a number of people. It wasn't intended that way, but it struck a nerve. I said, all of human suffering stems from ignorance. Now, one party or one person took offense by that for some reason because the implication was as though I was being judgmental. But remember, ignorance is not knowing something. I am ignorant. You are ignorant about some things about life. Ignorance is not knowing something. Stupid is refusing to learn from those who do. Rejecting wisdom and knowledge and understanding when it's offered to you, that is being stupid. But we are all ignorant. All of human suffering stems from ignorance. The antidote to ignorance is knowledge. You obtain knowledge through study. You develop understanding as part of that journey. Wisdom, knowledge, understanding. Information gathered properly can lead to knowledge. Comprehending the information will lead to understanding. Applying the said understanding and knowledge and information is what we call wisdom. The principal thing. Now, it struck a nerve because people thought that I was somehow suggesting that people are suffering as a result of their own ignorance. In many ways, I guess that's what I was trying to say. But the key part of what I was getting at was that ignorance is a choice. All of the knowledge in the world still exists. We just have to seek. Before the Wright brothers decided and discovered flight, the principles for flight were here. They didn't discover something that didn't exist. They simply tapped into a higher level of understanding, and they were able to dream and use their imagination and therefore create what we now enjoy as flight. Before that, we were relatively ignorant, but the information and the principles had been set. We just tapped into that information. Now, I realized as I listened to the couple and as I connected it to the conversation about ignorance, that it dawned on me that one of the things we all have to learn, especially if I juxtapose this with the sessions I did in the 2 days prior, which is about how do you allow other people to feed back into your life. It dawned on me that many people, myself included, we are very poor receivers. And we have to get really skilled at the art of receiving. How do we receive feedback? How do we receive information? How do we receive gifts? How do we receive criticism? How do we receive complaints? How do we receive compliments? How do we receive gifts? How do we receive life, abundance, prosperity? Most people do not know how to receive because most people have not been taught about the importance of being a good receiver. I'm going to try and begin that conversation in today's session. The prerequisite for being a good receiver is laying the right soil. Think about this in the parable of the seed. They talked about the sower and the seed, and it starts by saying, a farmer went out to sow, and then he spread his seed across different soils. Some fell on the rocky grounds, some fell amongst the thorns, some fell amongst the plains and scattered. And then finally, some fell on good ground. The ones that fell on the rocky grounds and the thorns, the rocky grounds tried to grow, not enough foundation, died. The ones amongst the thorns started to grow, the thorns killed it. The most important part was that eventually, if you sow good seeds enough, it will fall on good ground. But the story says, and it goes on to say, despite falling on good soil, some of the soil yielded 30%, and some of the soil yielded 60%, and some of the soil yielded 100%. Now, the most important part of that story, I hope, is a word: fascination. That's intriguing. You have to be curious about how is it possible that even on the good soil, some parts of the good soil do not receive the seed properly, and therefore they do not produce properly. And some receive much more, and some receive it in abundance. And so what I'm going to share today is a number of ways that you can think about how to become a good receiver. I'm going to give you some words, and you just think about these words, and don't worry too much about whether the words are consistent with what you would have chosen. I'm going to make mistakes as I teach. In the sessions to come, I will make significant errors of judgment. I will say things wrongly, and I will say things in a manner that it shouldn't be said. I'm still learning on the job. But if you're fascinated, number one, the word number one, fascination. Number two, curious. Number three, intrigued. Number four, open-minded. Number five, grounded. Number six, forgiving. Number seven, humble. Number eight, applying things in good faith. What you find is that if you combine all of those, and you combine it with not being judgmental or defensive, you might find that you're able to make better decisions and get to a certain part in life that far exceeds what most people could ever think or dream about. Are you fascinated enough about life? Are you curious? Are you inquisitive? Are you intrigued? Are you humble? Do you approach people and conversations in good faith? If the answer is no, or maybe, then I can assure you, you are not a good receiver. Those who are good receivers have all of the qualities that or traits that I just listed. Now, in the session I covered about the social dance, I was suggesting that if you are about to make an important decision, such as choosing a spouse, a significant other, a loved one, don't make the decision on your own. Allow other people and use what we call leverage, other people's experiences, OPE. Now, there are two ways of learning in life, or two ways of going through life. Personal experiences, I call it PE, and other people's experiences, OPE. To make it more in a colloquial sense, there are two ways of learning. You can learn from your mistakes, or you can learn from mentors. Learning from your mistakes means you go through the process of trials and errors. The problem is you have a finite amount of time, and therefore the consequence of learning from your experiences alone, though important, if you can consider the net benefit, there are some pains, there are some experiences that might jolt you that you never recover from. So, for example, I've met women and I've met men, and in the first instance, they had their heart broken because they gave their hearts to the wrong men or the wrong women, and they're jolted. And for 10, 15 years, you see a beautiful woman, a handsome man, has never been in a meaningful relationship because when he was 18 or 20, he dated a girl that he shouldn't have dated, the wrong person, and he tried to give his heart to her, and she messed him around, or he messed her around, and they were jolted for 10 years, a decade or more. And every relationship that they've gone into, they've sabotaged those relationships. Why? Because of the frame or the soil that they were on at that point in time. And therefore, they've moved through life in a skeptical position, not curious, not inquisitive, not welcoming of advice, and therefore not willing to seek the advice of other people because they chose to learn from their mistakes, and the mistake was too painful. Whereas if you learn from mentors and other people's experiences, you tend to live vicariously through the lives of other people. You don't make the same mistakes twice because one person has made it before. You know, a mother doesn't have to tell the daughter or the son, do not touch that pot because it will burn your fingers. The child can see the mother burn her fingers and say, well, mum was in a lot of pain. I shouldn't do that. I should avoid making the same mistake. So you can learn from other people's experiences, which is what life is supposed to be. At the core of the message I try to share, irrespective of how you take or see what I share, I'm trying to reinvest life in life. I made a lot of mistakes. There's certain things I wish I would have done earlier. And I'm simply sharing the knowledge in the hope that a few people pick it up and they do not go through life in the same routine that I did. And by avoiding some of my obstacles and mistakes, they accelerate and push their success to a position of being within reach. You don't have to live life in a manner that is limited. As a matter of fact, I will say something to you. Think about the relationships you've had. You have been responsible for the decisions in those relationships. For most people, myself included, a lot of the relationships never worked. Why? The same person that drove it into the ditch was trying to get it out of the ditch. You see, Newton said that you cannot, or Einstein, one of the two, said you cannot solve a problem at the same level that created it. So in order for you to solve a problem and find a solution to a problem, you have to go and transcend to a higher plane and find the answers and displace the old paradigm. You have to find a new paradigm that renders the old paradigm obsolete. For most of us, we find that through other people. So when it comes to choosing a spouse, buying a house, making important decisions, resigning from a job, quitting, taking a step, relocating, we try to sit down with other people who are wiser, smarter than we are, and we ask them, what would you do? As a matter of fact, I learned many years ago about the man who wanted to find success. And what he did simply was go around and interview people. And he said to them, in every instance, can you tell me something that has occurred in your life that was incredibly painful, a mistake you made, a crisis you found yourself in. And he would listen and they would share because people were very, and generally speaking, very giving, and they would share. Then he would ask a follow-up question. He would say, how did you get yourself out of the ruts? How did you overcome that crisis? What did you do? What are the steps? And they would tell him, and he would write it down. But he made a promise to them. He said, I'm writing down your solutions, but I'm not writing down your name. So you can be rest assured that whatever you tell me stays between both of us. And they told him, and he wrote it down. Then he'll go to another person, and he would do the same. And what he was doing is he was collecting formulas for success that he could invert. Simply, he took what people had done, avoided the mistakes, took the success equations, inverted them, placed them across each other, and you had what we call the law of large numbers. And he chose the best ideas, and he simply implemented the ideas. So what I'm saying in today's session is, receiving feedback can be hard. Receiving feedback from people that you care about and love, even harder. Because the one thing that we care about and we worry about and we sometimes scared of is being rejected. But the problem with not embracing that failure, the failure to be told you're not good enough, the failure to be told that you're not good in some particular thing, means that we become stupid in small things and we perpetuate the stupidity into large things. If you're stupid in small things, you will be stupid in large things. Hence the saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. So in today's session, the encouragement is ask questions relentlessly. In the session I mentioned, or rather the podcast that I was listening to, as I listened to the two sections, the ones who aligned with what would be my belief system, I could see that they had no interest. They had no fascination about the opposite side. They had no curiosity. They were not humble. They were too judgmental. And what we found was an opportunity to have traveled into another person's mind and world and understood them and travelled back out and said, fine, I don't agree with you, but I understand you. You see, to be interested, you have to be interested. And I found from this side, there was very little interest going the other way. And therefore, those who were the anomalies, and these were people who were anomalies based on how we think society should function, they didn't share as much as they should. So, you see, all of human suffering stems from ignorance. Ignorance is a choice. I would encourage you, irrespective of where you are in life, if it's business, if it's health, if it's relationships, if it's spirituality and religion, whatever your goals might be, develop the appetite to ask people what they think. You don't have to accept it. When they share, don't neglect it. And certainly don't accept it immediately. The first question you should always ask yourself is, number one, is the advice being given in good faith and peaceably? Number two, were there any priors, preconceptions, or prejudices from the people towards what you've asked them to review? Number three, is it fair? That's a key word, is it fair? Number four, is it true? You don't have to accept everything people give you, but it's important for you to take what is given to you because that serves as a contrast. There can't be good without evil. We walk into this space, as I usually do, and I switch on the lights. And what you find is that the darkness is displaced by the light. Darkness still remains, but it's in a corner, waiting for the light to leave. So, when we ask people for advice, what we're looking for is light. We don't have to accept what we're given. The question we ask is, does this information and can this information help me achieve my goal? Whenever the answer is yes, welcome the information, try to adapt and implement the information within reason, and review the results. Try it on a small scale, review the results and see whether it's pushing you towards your goal or taking you away from your goal. If you find that it is pushing you towards your goal, apply it. I'll close today's session with the following statement. You have to become a good receiver in life. Get off the whole thing about how things are said and focus more on what is said. If what is said is the truth, and if what is said can give you life, then apply it. I left the podcast as I watched it with an encouragement to myself. I said to myself, oh boy, I have a lot of work to do in learning how to be curious, how to be interested, how to be fascinated, how to be humble, how to be reaching, how to come in good faith. Because what is stopping my blessings from coming my way is myself. My blessings are tied up around the people around me. Think about this. The universe doesn't give you anything by itself. It has to give it to you through other people. Sometimes it's wealth. Sometimes it's words. Sometimes it's wisdom. And what you're looking for is the opportunity to receive what is being given. But fundamentally, you have to be able to recognize and seek. Is the ASK word. Ask, seek, knock. You play that on a Scrabble, and if you're not lucky to land on a triple word score, on a double word score, the overall score isn't that necessarily great. But simple words, 3 letters, ASK, ask, seek, knock. Whatever we want in life, and even if that includes learning from other people, getting their feedback, and outsourcing some of our decisions and using other people's experiences, time, resources, money, leverage, we have to ask. We have to become good askers. But the prerequisite is that you have to be a good receiver. You have to have a good soil. So that when what is requested arrives, it doesn't produce 30% or 40. It certainly doesn't produce 60 or 70, but it blossoms beyond 100. Pressed over, shaken together, and running over. Now, I hope today's session has been useful.